Hello, and welcome everyone to the third installment of the iGraphics Executive Webinar Series, Strategy to Execution, Aligning the Operating Model. I'm very pleased to introduce you to Mark Stanford, Senior Director of Program Management here at iGraphics, and Professor Mark von Rosing, Head of the Global University Alliance and founder of Lead Frameworks. We're going to be recording today's webinar, and we'll share that webinar later today for those of you who aren't able to join us live. And just a reminder, if you have any questions during the session, just enter them into the GoToWebinar questions window, and we'll answer them at the end. Please just put your questions right in there as we go through the presentation while they come up, and then we'll make sure and cover them before the end of the presentation. So I want to thank you all for joining today's special event, which is the third session of our executive webinar series on innovation and transformation. This series is a little different than some of the series iGraphics has done before focused around product. We're actually designing the series to explore concepts that are meant to enhance your way of thinking about how your organization creates value, optimizes performance, and improves business outcomes. We started this series with an overview presentation on how successful companies approach and achieve innovation and transformation, which, if you missed it, we encourage you to check it out at the link shown. The research presented in that session laid the foundation for the rest of our series, which dives into the specifics of each of the business model domains that were discussed: value, revenue and service, performance, cost, and operations. Then we talked about how each of those business models actually ties into innovation and transformation. In the second session, we explored the fundamentals of cost-cutting initiatives and how they support transformation. And today, we'll continue talking about how you can achieve business transformation through managing your business operations. So specifically, today you'll learn how to map and define your business's operating model. Within it, how to identify opportunities for integration and standardization, and how to set up operational measurements and link them back to strategy. We're also going to show you how to control operational activities through process modeling, leverage the people and technology resource distribution to improve operations, and to top it off, how to ensure compliance and governance using various policies and guidelines. So before I hand things over to Professor Mark von Rosing, I just want to take a brief moment to introduce him. I know many of you have seen other webinars in this series where I've gone into a little bit more detail. Again, I encourage you to go back and take a look at those and get to know Mark a little bit better. But just quickly, Mark is the world expert in strategy enterprise modeling, and he's the founder of Lead Frameworks, which is actually the fastest growing framework group, both in terms of overall adoption and in growth of practitioners certified in that framework. Mark has been involved in the development of well-known frameworks like TOGAF, the SAP, ASAP implementation methods, and he partners with major BPM vendors that have adopted those modeling principles. He's also the Global University Alliance BPM and EA curriculum, and he is an author with a number of books on business process management. So he's a great partner to have for this webinar series. We're very pleased to have him with us to bring you this series, which so far has been very well received. Professor Mark von Rosing and iGraphics have also paired up to offer workshops to the webinar viewers that are interested in how they can apply the concepts we're presenting to solve their own challenges. And so far, those have also been a great success. I'll talk about this a little bit more after the presentation. So it's a pleasure to have you join us again, Mark. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Gretchen. That's very kind of you. Very good. As Gretchen said, we will today talk about strategy to execution, and in this way, how we align the operating model. So let's jump directly into it. When looking at it and discussing an operating model, we have two aspects to consider. First of all, important. Some people say, what is an operating model and how does it differentiate from a business model? Let me just spend 2 words on that. A business model includes everything from the business. An operating model, well, as actually the word says, it describes how an organization operates. So everything of the operation should be in an operating model. So this includes the organization's operational business competencies, the business functions, all the different resources, the roles, the actors, the processes, the task, as well as obviously the organizational setup and the technology that supports those solutions. Today we want to talk about how can you make decisions to align this, because we all know in organizations they are challenged with the aspect. Some organizations do process optimizations across various lines, across flows. What might happen is that is not aligned to the information flow. How do you align it to the information flow, to reporting, to measurements, to different aspects we will handle today in order to have a better decision making between business, informations, process, rules, compliance. So our examples will center around oil and gas. You will have in the end, Gretchen will present. Any one of you wants to have for another session, you can send myself or Gretchen or both of us a suggestion from an industry. We received several requests from oil and gas, so we chose oil and gas. So the examples we will do today will be around oil and gas. It's the value chain models, the business models, the operating models, the cross workflows. In this case we actually chose finance because it touches the most. The business model we did choose was upstream. We could choose from upstream, downstream, and the chemical and the loop and lots of other areas. We chose upstream. So having put the scene, let's jump directly into it. A little bit what influences the operating model. It doesn't matter which industry you are in, it is influenced by certain factors. If you are in the government organizations, it's influenced by the factors of the political scene, as well as the economic. If you are private organizations, you are influenced both by legislative parts, as well as you are influenced by economics, technology development, the workforce, etc., etc. In this case, there is no question that the oil and gas operating model kind of depends on the oil price, oil and gas price. It's pretty much around 90 barrels WTI. Today it is close to 97. It was 96.86 this morning, so it's close to 97. Long term it is believed it can rise as much to 120 to 125 barrel. So we all know oil is one of the few products in the market. It is scarce product. Now it is used. There are some different tendencies and different trends in that market that influence the operating model. Let's take a look at some of them. On the very right, you see actually shale gas. Well, the shale gas abstraction is actually a very happening thing in the market. We see today, if you already look at the US, 20% of gas is based on shale gas. So in this case, it has lowered the gas prices in the US quite a bit compared to understanding. I know they have been raised in generally, but compared to the rest of the market price for fueling. If you then look at different aspects, Europe is looking very much into shale gas. Poland is one of them leading in it, and other countries are looking at it. Then you look at tight oil. It's the very top one. That's relatively new. It's reservoirs for low porosity and permeability. So the real challenge there is the transport, pipelines, etc. But this is coming. There's lots of reservoirs within there. The challenge to actually get some of it out, that increases the price. Then we have underground coal gasifications. We have oil sands. The oil sands, not to be underestimated. While it has not been profitable to do the operations there by the operating model of that, it has changed with the oil prices. It is actually estimated, if you think of it, the US has as much as 2 trillion barrels which happens to be the largest oil reservoir in the world. So if one can actually split the bitumen from the sand in a much better way and extract oil from it, the cost is still around $22 at a barrel, which is double the price of a normal, which actually increases how you operate with it. And including to that, there's lots about oil sand. Challenges of how to do it in the operations that is different than in the rest of the operations. Then you can look at liquid natural gas. This is really a big riser, including, you see the picture in the very low on the left, large fields that can produce up to 30 years. Not to forget Arctic and Greenland, to be thinking of that it stands for more than a quarter of the world's untapped oil reserves. Good that Greenland is actually under Danish flag, and I just wanted to add that as a Danish citizen. Anyway, you see, and including to this, we have renewable energy, safety and environment, and lots of other aspects influencing today the business model and the operating model. The one we will focus a lot on is how all of this that we have mentioned in the below one, the digital, the information management, is very complex. This is why when somebody suggested oil and gas, we thought this is a perfect industry. This is just as complex and difficult as hospital, health, defense industries, telecom industries, where you have very complex operations. It's very diversified. How in the world do you integrate multiple complexity and share for some cost savings, improvements, operational efficiency? So for this I will introduce this slide a little bit, because this would kind of be a set agenda. You will see through the presentation we will use this as kind of introducing the different subjects. It starts from the very top. We will first look and define an operating model. What does it include? That includes looking at the operational strategies and goals. Then what can you innovate? Aspects of defining the level of standardization and integration. Then we will go in and look at it from a business model perspective. In this case, a value chain. There we jump directly into the oil and gas. How can you connect it to the critical success factors, identifying transformation potential and identifying the improvements potentials. We will then drill more down into the operational business model, where we actually look at the operating model in detail. There we will look at different ones from upstream, downstream. We will look at an explorations, drilling. Then we will come to a process landscape. So we will actually drill down into finance, which we made sure that it can fit to everybody's industry who's listening. So that's kind of how we will take more a top-down approach of defining the operating model and then drill it down. Having said that, the first aspect we will look at is strategy. An operating model needs to define certain goals and objectives. For those of you who have seen the two earlier sessions, you know that the leading practice is based on the study of organizations, what the outperformers do. This, by the way, is an overview of the goals and objectives chosen around operating models. This can include, by the way, the percentage kind of shows who chose this. So 99% of most organizations we meet, they look at improved customer interaction in order to improve their operations. They strengthen innovation culture, expand their service and product portfolio, so it can or reduce the costs of goods sold, or they increase their partnering aspects in the operating model. So it can be lots of different ones. The one we will look at specifically and drill down to, the examples used, is the financial perspective. In this case, we feel this is the one because as we have oil and gas, if we go into some of the others, it will be very different looking at improving in partner interactions in oil and gas than it would be within another industry. However, we felt that the aspects of finance could at least fit quite good to it, therefore everybody can benefit from the still detailed example. So let's take a look at, if we look at the financial aspects of strategy. So if we would improve the financial operating model, and we drill this down, this could be split, and by the way, this is just an overview. It was split into 10 areas. It had 10 critical success factors. In this case, we are looking at improved financial services, improved financial resource management, improved decision making, and improved information management. Some of these are very specific, so improve the financial resource management already, as you will see, coordinate rules and compliance across upstream business units. So you will have aspects that go very, very detailed within the finance. Other aspects includes already integration to other business units, like improve information flow or improve financial risk management process. So we will go through this much more in detail. This is just the introduction. You will see this slide and these strategies much more. This is just the introduction saying, as most organizations, they have strategies, they have critical success factors, and they have some KPIs defined what they need to do. These are ones that we took from oil and gas, in this case an upstream organization. So the real question we could be asking ourselves, which I will hand over to Mark Stanford from iGraphics, he will be saying, how do you reflect this view already? So if you have specific strategies relating to a specific area of critical success factors and KPIs, how do you already model this in iGraphics? The reasons we already do this very early is we had a lot of requests asking how would we go about it. We liked what we saw, but how do we do it in iGraphics? So I'm giving over to Mark Stanford.
Thanks, Mark. So during our presentation today, I'll show a specific business transformation example from Global Corp Oil, a fictional Fortune 100 energy company. Now, early in their innovation and transformation initiatives, Global Corp Oil designed a strategy map to analyze and prioritize their finance-related standardization and integration goals. It's divided into strategic business objectives. That's seen in the top and in the middle and the lower risk strategic business objective that you see here. Also, critical success factors such as improved corporate services and key performance indicators such as improved cash flow or improved business performance reporting processes. This graphical representation is linked to show alignment to business models, to process models, and other analysis that we perform. Now, in order to anchor the transformation into the organization and create the right accountability, ownership for each element of this strategy map is specified by a RACI relationship, such as to this Chief Financial Officer, where I can see all of her responsibilities within the organization. I can also see the relationship to the business model and the competencies within the business model. I'll return to this later in this presentation. And from the perspective of the key performance indicators, in addition to competency relationships, I can see the relationships to the process models who must achieve the key performance indicators in our strategy map. So later, I'll show the business model in more detail, and I'll demonstrate how an organization's operating model strategy can align and drive a transformation project. But first, I'll return control back to Professor Mark.
Very good, thank you. I think this illustrated in a very good way the aspects of and the importance of, in this case, you allocate the strategies to the different critical success factors, and you can allocate it both to people responsible. So you can actually use the whole RACI idea of responsible, accountable, informed. So you can literally run through who would be working with these aspects. We will come back to this a little bit more. So now we go to the next subject. So we are jumping a little bit. We will come back to the strategies. Why do we take this little jump? There's two major decisions an organization needs to do when looking at an operating model. An organization needs to make the choices between the level of standardization and how integrated their operations, meaning their business functions, their services, and information should be across those business processes. You will actually see, if you think, oh, well, it's kind of like simplistic. No, this, I can promise you, in many ways, I believe if you will see this through, you will see that many of the operational challenges you have is because you did not rethink the operating model through that lens. The basic idea is very important. It's taken by adapted from Enterprise Architecture as a Strategy by Gene Ross, Well, and Robinson. They are from MIT. There's a great book on it, Adapting Enterprise Architecture as a Strategy. However, it is there very limited that it actually only looks at it from process and data and perspectives of architecture. We have enlarged that much, much more. So let's take a look at it. In this perspective, you look at it in four lenses. If my business process standardization, so meaning if my standardization is low and my business process integration is low, obviously then my business functions, my services, my partners, my customers, they are diversified. My entire operating model is that I am unique. Therefore, I am diversified from what the others do. Now let me specify. This is where lots of organizations are today and where they shouldn't be, because they actually are not diversified. They could have a higher level of standardization and they would need a much higher level of integration. So the very aspect that they don't handle this, the operating model, the right way, is the reasons for high cost and a lot of complexity. So then there is the area where when you have a high level of standardization, my operating model is obviously replicated. So I can replicate more aspects. In this case, you have few shared processes, but you replicate them. I know this confuses a lot of people because they believe it's like, oh no, they should have lots of shared processes. No, then there wouldn't be the need for replicating the processes if it is actually shared. It is not shared. Let me make an example. McDonald's here in Copenhagen or McDonald's in New York have, besides the name and besides the level of quality, very, very little in common. They might flip the burgers the same way, exactly, because that has been standardized how to do the operations. So they don't have shared processes, but they have standardized processes. So they have a high level of replications of doing it. So you could have multiple areas of finance or HR who do recruiting, but they do it in a high level of standardization, meaning replication. Okay, we get this idea. Then there is the area where I have a low level of standardization, but a high level of integration. There will be aspects of your business where you cannot have a high level of standardization because in the area you are unique. You need flexibility, you need agility, you need the aspects of innovation, not standardization. So it is actually argued that 5% of any organization is your core differentiating aspects. If you are not diversified and unique in that, if you use a high level of standardization there, you actually destroy the very uniqueness you have in your business. So understanding the difference, how to work between them, is quite important. As a matter of fact, the root cause of most problems we see in organizations is due to this. This is, by the way, why we have chosen this session. The next one is actually, obviously, it's a high level of standardization and high level of integration. And while many of you might think, well, isn't that what we would want? In some of the areas, you definitely want it. Because you do have shared processes, shared customers, shared partners, shared information, shared transactions. You have similar operations. You have originated wide process owners, which right now needs to be shared everywhere, because you need to service the customer the same way, because you have the same customer. In this case, you need a unified model, which actually already includes a high level of coordination and a high level of replication. So, how to do this is not easy. Let's take a look at it from a very perspective of how to implement this. So, as we mentioned, we will look in oil and gas. We will now look at a value chain view. So this is already a business model. Some of you might already know this from Porter's. So if you have read or engineering or business management or business administration, you might have already studied basics of value chain view of Porter. This is not a process model. Porter's model is a value chain view of the business, not a process chain view. Okay, here we see the business model from Upstream. So this is, we would have explorations, appraisals, developments, the operations, the maintenance. And then, so this is the primary, the dark blue is the primary business competencies. This is what you would say the direct, indirect money flow. Why? Because planning does not make the money, but it's the indirect money flow. It's actually what is Porter then defined as your core competitive aspects. It's your core parts of your value chain. Not to be confused with a core process or what is called a main process. They are two different aspects. You have in exploration lots of core processes, or what we call main processes, and lots of supporting processes. That has nothing to do that this aspect is core differentiating. This is where you create the value in Upstream in this flow. Then you have lots of shared service business competencies. They literally service these organizations. You will see, we will actually drill down in one of them. We will drill down in explorations, and you will see that these service organizations here on the bottom will still be there even though explorations is drilled down in depth. So that truly proves that they are shared service organizations. More and more have IT joining this as well. That IT's business model of IT starts to become a shared service center, servicing the business, and is run like a business as well. Anyway, in addition to that, we see the outside forces here. These are the external influencing factors we talked about, which could be by competitors. If they suddenly do what we call the shale gas much better, or if they do the tight oil, or they do the LNG or floating liquid natural gas better, or oil sand extraction better than the others, then the competition arises and it becomes difficult. So these external factors here are what we already talked about. So let's take a look at exploration. This is the explorations in detail. So I would have the planning and resource management, the bassin analysis, the acreage evaluations, the appraisals, the exploration and technical service. In this case, you could actually you have to split it by local, if a country, actually if an organization has a local big penetration and an international. We could, however, look at development as well and split it down. Development would look like this. In this case, I have the aspects of drilling and development engineering, but you still see the same shared service organizations here. This is very important. This proves, by the way, that there is a huge service flow, a huge information flow. So the process flow of development would be the main one we would see would be here, The other ones, that's the process flow from the other areas. So you could only see that from a service flow and from an information flow perspective, that they heavily interact with each other. So we will discuss that later on, because this already starts to touch an operating model, as you see, because I already need to define in all these different areas, I need to start to define my level of integration and my level of standardization, meaning my operations. For this, I will hand over again to my colleague, oh, he's not my colleague, but to Mark Graphics from iGraphics, who will present to us in iGraphics how would this be handled from the perspective in iGraphics to set up your business model and operating model in a value chain view.
Thanks, Mark. So I'm back looking at our model, and in this case, instead of navigating through the strategy map, I'm going to start and navigate through the model, through the business model. So in the PowerPoint slide, Mark already showed you this view, and he drilled into exploration. I'm going to drill into one of the shared services, finance, to look into more detail into the competencies organized by the business area, the business competency group, and finally down below here, the operational competencies. Following that linkage, I can see the KPIs and the critical success factors that this competency fulfills and delivers. And I can follow the linkage through again and see the indirect relationship to the processes. And in a later part of my sessions, we'll dive into this particular process map. Now, how does one create these business models and also process models? Well, it's pretty easy and kind of fun. You simply use drag and drop to create new shapes in your diagrams and process maps that are linked to the objects that would be shared throughout a repository of diagrams and models within your organization. That's especially important when you have shared processes and tasks that you want to reuse. If you create a new object on the diagram side, that can also be drag and dropped into the repository in the location desired. Okay, that was just a quick short little segment on my part. Like I said, when we get back, we're going to look into a process example. But first, I'll pass control back to Professor Mark.
Thank you very much. That's very kind of you. We felt it was very important because we had a lot of people and listeners writing to us saying, this was very good, I need to repeat that, or need to be able to show the organizations how could we go about this. So, and by the way, we want to kind of show what kind of, if you already, so we are not selling anything. Leading practice costs nothing. The community is nothing. It's actually an open source standard. In this case, iGraphics has adapted their meta models. The reasons we have these web sessions is not to, in this perspective, sell you something. It's to actually enable you more to use what you have. Obviously, I don't want to hide. Most likely, iGraphics has the interest of then being the penetration more. But let's take a look at what that means from an operating model. So if I have done in the start, so I've linked my competencies right now to the strategy. I have now defined who's responsible, the different owners. So I have resources and actors and roles attached to it. At this moment, I need to start to look at how diversified are my different aspects of my business. So that could be administration, HR, IT, the business development, the operations, the operational support, the distribution, the marketing, the sales, the finance, the reporting, the corporate strategy. I right now, and my decisions here, how much are shared, how much is integrated, influence both my systems, my architecture, and my data. So right now I want to expand a little bit your mind of saying, whoa, watch out. you think of it most likely from an operational perspective, thinking, oh, I need to integrate the data, I need to do this. We have duplications of informations, we have duplications of functions, we have duplications of resources and duplications of reports, and we have not really very good integrated that aspect. What we're trying to say is that's most likely because you have made a wrong decision. You are treating the whole thing as one operating model. Instead of redefining some of it, what should have a higher level of standardization, what should be replicated and totally integrated, which could be the financial reporting. So instead of like on the left side where it's diversified, where each one, and it was very interesting, I just had a call today with an organization who said, yeah, but we have standard replicated master data and metadata and defined of how to do structured data and information. But, very interesting, every organization still could do their financial reporting the way they wanted to do. Voila, they are still diversified. Meaning it has a high level of complexity and high cost. There is no need that that is done. As a matter of fact, the possibility to save money there is immense. It should, however, not be done in all areas. So, the level of replications, where to do it, with which systems, in which architecture aspect, with which data, is quite essential. In addition to that, there are certain aspects that need to have a high level of coordination, meaning my level does not need to be standardized. There is parts of organizations we visit who do the mistake, they actually do typical mistakes on the bottom line. Either they replicate through all organizations, meaning they have a high level of standardization, they have a standardization strategy and they do it everywhere. They apply Lean and Six Sigma everywhere and the same, not realizing it does give a lot of improvements. We are huge Six Sigma and Lean fans. Obviously, I teach it on the university as well. So we are not saying anything against it. The challenge, however, is there is at least 15 to 20% of your organization that creates value in a diversified, unique way. If I'm standardizing there and replicating what I do in other areas, and even implement best practice software, I'm actually destroying the uniqueness I have. I should use a higher level of integration instead of a higher level of standardization. So, having said that, furthermore, as we already discussed, a unified way. So you should be looking at this from an overall business model perspective through all business units, as well as you can do it specifically for one system, or specifically from one system applied to different business units. Having had this in place, let's take a look at, we now want to look at a little bit more deeper into the operational business models of how they could be looking. So, this is a business model view from oil and gas upstream. In this case, you would see we already have within here, they do the whole analysis, the explorations, appraise and evaluations, the design, the installations, where you would start to have parts of capacity management, design and engineering. So right now you are putting all in place. Then you have the operations, the well management. Within here you do somewhere you abandon it, meaning saying that's it. You need to do site restorations, contracting for all aspects, divestments and abandonment strategy. And obviously there is the lots of parts of business administration within it. Now this is what you typically do. So when you have such a business model here, you can slice and dice it in different ways. You could be looking at it from explorations all over. That could be looking like this. This is an operating model. So this is an exploration operating model where you would see all the aspects of percent analysis, acreage evaluations, appraisals, explorations, the block field acquisitions, sanctioned block field, etc. So you could have all the different areas with dry well, technical support, the commercial discoveries, as well as exploration technical services. Within here, please note you see on the bottom something. Here you define your core competitive competencies and your core differentiating competencies. as well as you identify your value opportunities and performance opportunities. This is very important. You cannot define this on a process. If you don't do this in your business model or the last chance in your operating model, then you don't have this perspective in your processes. Thereby you have no perspective of what really creates value and what not. What really differentiates, what is core differentiating, what is core competitive. So this is where you can add it, and by the way, this is not difficult. This is typically something we do in 1-2 days with a business. I've done this for one of the biggest oil and gas companies in the world, where I've done all their business models from very upstream to downstream in 2 weeks in this level of detail. So it is not that it takes you years to do such a thing. And let me tell you that an executive, he knows his business quite well. When we meet with the executive from the explorations part or from the percent analysis and acreage evaluations, they have a pretty good knowledge of the main things that they do. Within 5 minutes, they've told you what they do, and within 5 minutes of the top executives, they can decide where do they have the challenges, where are they core differentiating, where is it they really need to compete, where is it they are non-core, meaning where is it they want to apply cost-cutting strategies. So then you could be looking at furthermore. So we looked at it just here from the perspectives, I'm going back. We looked at it from all exploration, looking in detail. I could furthermore slice and dice it through some of the aspects here of the shared services, where I'm literally looking at it, the corporate shared services, servicing all the organizations. The reasons we're looking into this one, and this is already looking at aspects of legal, risk management, the distribution, supply chain management, the human resource, the financial operations, as well as the financial analytics and the finance. In this case, they have split these two because they had both of them running locally. So at that level, you also here define where is it you need to be differentiating. In this case, you actually see here in finance, they decided we need to be core competitive in our reportings because we need to make real-time decisions much faster, so they actually have performance even to it. Meaning here we need to be better at performance aspects. Actually, if you go over to financial operations, where it's actually within the explorations, development, or production, you would actually see the performance reporting. There they need to be core differentiating. They need to be able to know what's the pressure on my pipes right now, how much can I get out, what does this mean, if there is an impact, what does it mean for the organization, what does it mean for my sales, what does it mean for my delivery of what I have already promised or have contracts with customers, etc., etc. Similar like many other businesses and other industries are. So in this case, we will focus in finance. That is what we promised today and what was one of the requests from the different ones that we had. So remember our financial strategies. I'm bringing them up. You already saw the first 3 categories here, where we had the different strategies. They link to the different key performance indicators. At this level, you could link them, and as you already saw, we linked it to the upstream shared service finance. Then you have the business competencies. That could be corporate finance, or you could have the corporate planning involved, or you could have the corporate finance and environmental safety and healthy involved. You could further have information analysis involved because they need to support the financial reporting. So, which actually would then be being a part of the upstream shared service IT departments. So, however, it's still the owner of CFO who's responsible for the financial reporting. But he needs to interact with IT to enable that for the information analysis. I know we all know that, but this is just to show, okay, actually executing such an operating model, we know that this actually includes lots of things, including that strategy management wants to have the corporate finance perspective, in order to differentiate oil segments. So the CFO and the COO have that responsibility and challenge. Let me tell you already right now that already these involved includes a lot of different operating models and a lot of different ways of working. So if we take a look at how these operate within the process and how this operations needs to be executed, here's an example. This is an as-is business view. So the organization, so health, safety, and environment needs to be very integrated and very standardized. So it was way up here. Finance needed to have a high level of standardization and a high level of integration. So did HR. So there's different aspects of your business who have a different way of operating. Petroleum engineering, in this case, production, development, explorations, and drilling all had different operating models. What does that mean for the business? Well, I can tell you a lot if you look at it from a 2B information perspective. So you shouldn't change the operating model of finance right now, but it needs to have an information flow that at least integrates all of it. Because if all of this and explorations needs to be very diversified because of its agility and flexibility need. This is the reasons. This fits just as much to any one of your industries you are working in. There's aspects of your business that needs to have high level of diversification, while other aspects, the production, really needs a high level of standardization because it really needs to produce very good and in a standard way. So, for this, how to model this within a system when you come to processes, I want to give over to Mark Stanford from iGraphics, who actually will show us in iGraphics how do you handle your processes in such a way.
Thanks, Mark. So as Professor Mark noted, finance provides many shared services, and this order process is one of them. Now, when I look at this sequence flow, it's obvious the process is a complex service, making it a prime candidate for unification. Now this process, and it's based on a real-life transformation project, has several challenges, including the following. First, there's a lack of standardization. So if we look at this in a little more detail, we can see there's a high number of gateways or decisions taking place in the process. And many of these decision points are due to non-standard pricing exceptions. You can see that term used often. The word exception does not go along well with the word standardization, does it? So this impacts the performance of this process and also impacts our decision-making flow. Second, there's a lot of incomplete or incorrect data. Many of these gateways are necessary to correct and clarify information problems that are created before the process gets down to the sales and operation specialists in this particular process. In addition, the data is siloed, and the operations specialist has to retrieve and store data in multiple sources that we can see marked with the information and business objects in this specific process. Third, you can see that there are way too many manual tasks. Everywhere you see the appropriate BPMN task type on the activities step. And this also makes standardization difficult or impossible, and it contributes to the silos of information. So clearly, this particular service is not a unified process. Now, it's very diversified, and diversified would be acceptable in exploration, for example, which our operating model identified as a service that needs to be innovative. Shared financial services, however, should have high levels of integration and standardization to provide unified, efficient services. So in my next segment, I'm going to show how to design, test, and implement an improved version of this process that meets our operating model strategies and goals. So I'll pass control back to Mark.
Thank you very much. That's very kind of you. I think this was very helpful to see that what we are discussing and the thing that we will try to kind of reflect on and show is the aspect that the challenge of what I'm deciding from a business perspective has an impact on the processes. And many process optimization projects which run multiple in organizations, and if you are taking the big ones, the telecommunications, the whole infrastructure providers of utilities, if you are taking big engineering, production companies, defense organizations, just like oil and gas, if you have multiple aspects of business units that are very complex or very diversified, I can already promise you that your real challenges will lay in the operating model, not in actually your information integrations and your data aspects. They are a result of the problem that you have neglected to rethink the operating model from that perspective. That's why we wanted to prove it, to show it, that in the process you can actually see the difficulties. However, every organization then thinks a process people, they will rethink the process, but from the existing way that it operates. So actually right now you don't really change anything besides optimizing the mess. You are optimizing the complexity to be more streamlined, but you still have the same garbage in, garbage out principle. It's just to bring it a little bit step further. So let's take a look at it a little bit more detailed, what we want to have. So replication actually means that you have simple services. If you have services that goes across an organization or to a customer that are simple, it doesn't matter if you have a core process, meaning we call them main process. The reasons we don't call them core process is not to come into conflict. Everybody who has studied business, from executives, they understand on the core something totally different. They understand it from core competitive and core differentiating. So in this case we will mention it as main processes. You will have main processes and supporting processes who still do simple services, deliver simple services to the business, or cross flows of information. In this case the level of replication is high. Furthermore, your driver is cost cutting. Your BPM, meaning your business process management need, meaning from Lean or Six Sigma or TQM or business process reengineering principles, optimization straight all the way through. Why? Your driver is cost cutting. And obviously standardization. From a unification perspective, it starts to become more complex services because they need to have a high level of integration and a high level of standardization. In this case, my drivers are performance. This is very good because Lean and Six Sigma and TQM and business process reengineering or business process engineering or value engineering, lots of good methods are around. They look at in the BPM need is effectiveness and efficiency. I would actually say that the very methods that I have mentioned are in its nature for those two areas, meaning when there is a high level of standardization. When, however, we start to be where there is unique services, then the driver's value. I can already tell you right now, I know of no existing method that handles this in a good way. Yes, don't tell me about, yeah, but they have the value chain. Well, that value chain, that all is called a value chain because it's a chain beneath each other. They do not capture value drivers. They do not capture the critical success factors of the business, what makes them unique and where they are unique. In this case, they can therefore in BPM not support the innovation aspects. So it's not about effectiveness and efficiency that I had over there. It's not about optimization. It's not about performance. It's a totally different modeling principles. Already here, we see that a lot of practitioners start to fill the right modeling principles to the right operating model. So before we identify right now 2 challenges, I would like to repeat them. 1, an organization has often not defined the operating model the right way. 2, they apply the same modeling principles for all areas. Thereby, even if they would have defined their unique and differentiated operating models, it actually right now, that approach kills the very aspects of the need to create value or performance or standardization in some of the areas. In addition to that, then we have the diversified ones. There, it's about the strategic services. Obviously, because they are so differentiating, they are so diversified, that this must be the aspect that delivers strategic aspects. So the drivers is around goals and objectives, because it's that what sets the direction. The BPM need for that is innovation. If your organization has parts that are very diversified than the rest of your organizations, and it does not deliver the strategic aspects, and the drivers are not goals and objectives, then it should not be diversified. Or you are applying it, the top-down approach or the bottom-up approach, wrong. Both of it, however, has devastating aspects of how your execution happens. So, last but not least, there is something in the middle of this. There is something that is specialized, that is integrated between all of them, where the drivers are performance and value aspects and governance. You remember the ones that were in the middle? They were finance and HR and some of the others ones. And if you look at it, think about it. I mean, we discussed finance here. What's the BPM need? If you talk with a CFO, what's his major need? Performance aspects, value aspects, and governance aspects. What's the main thing he expects from you? That he needs to be able to monitor and control the business. Kind of already that example very much proves that this exists. So, how is this executed in the operations of an organization? You would have to identify within here there's 2 aspects here, the goal chain and what we call the problem chain. So what are your main goals and what are your main problems? In all your different operating models, it doesn't matter how you are set up to operate. You will have bottom-up things that don't work, meaning your performance, your solutions, your challenges from an operation perspective left, meaning you have certain pain points and needs based on the as-is. Then there is always the executives who say, yeah, that's nice and good, but we have certain wants, meaning the goal chain, meaning they have a to-be state, meaning that's their value drivers, their scorecards, the things they want to achieve. This challenge to align this in an operating model is not easy, because it doesn't matter how you have set it up, you have a way of doing it. To implement a new way of thinking based on a goal chain and to actually take away your operational problems takes a lot of work. In this case, this is a true life mapping of the pain points of finance. So in this case, you see this was scorecards, ECC6. This would be in SAP systems for those of you who don't know it. Cannot give the right or all data as the information is collected from many systems. So the business flow pain point is incomplete data from a system. The process flow pain point, non-availability of expected data for the processing. That's all you could see from a process perspective. So you could see data would be siloed, the input, output, and the storage. From an information flow pain point, required data is not available in the systems. In terms of the driver, this both hurts in terms of performance and cost. So we have shown here 3 problems: real-time data for decision making, information is needed during budgeting and consolidation. These pain points here have an impact of the rest of the organization. So this is the why I'm showing you right now of how you follow pain point modeling. It's actually from engineering and from enterprise architecture. You do the root cause and impact analysis. So if you have certain pain points here that the CFO has, increased the business administration, eroding profit. So he wants to have control and contain the overhead cost. We just showed beforehand that all of these three, if you saw here, had cost or performance and cost and performance aspects. So if you link this and see what's the reasons, you would see that there is linkage between the business where one problem is inherited by the other. So if I have a siloed data here or siloed functionality over there, I will have an impact where there is duplication in another area. So the one operating model has an impact to the other operating models. The financial problems we showed you, or the financial lack of standardization and the financial challenges within the scorecards, information and data between the systems, had these problems. This is the cost-oriented pain points in then drilling, in the production technology, reservoir engineering, reservoir geoscience, etc., etc. You see the idea. So this is the cost-oriented pain points that couldn't be tracked. This is the performance-oriented pain points in the rest of the organizations. You remember the operating model showing how they should be integrated, those aspects. And these are the value-oriented aspects that has been hurting. So in other words, it truly has an impact if there is an operating model deficiency, not working very effective or in an efficient way. So I'm giving over right now to Mark, and we are coming slowly to the end where we are discussing what can you do, what's the modeling principles behind it. So Mark Stanford, I'm handing over to you.
Thanks, Mark. So with our strategic objectives as our guide, it's time to improve the performance of the order process we were looking at earlier. Now, today, the process averages about 4 days to fulfill an order, a cycle time that exceeds our goals. As I showed earlier, the process has multiple issues regarding standardization, incomplete data, manual data entry, etc. Fortunately, Global Oil did capture enough metrics to enable a transformation project. For example, they know how long it takes for each one of this specific activities in the process. They've also captured the business and information flows through the process. So with this knowledge, I'm actually able to build a simulation model of this particular process. With a simulation model, I can perform what-if analysis and experiments on it. And when I simulate it, the simulation produces results. I compare these results against the real-life process to help me have confidence that I have an accurate model. So for example, the total cycle time is around 4 days, and the number of incoming orders matches the real-life process. So this gives me a base to do the what-if experiments on this particular process. Also, the simulation results help point me to the issues. So a lot of the cycle time I can tell is due to the activities oriented around the exception processing and the problems with the incomplete data, as seen in this report of specific activities and their cycle time. So in my what-if scenario, I'm going to create a new streamlined process that improves and reduces the bottlenecks in the previous process. I'll standardize the data entry, I'll improve the information flow, and I'm moving the decision making regarding exceptions, for example, upstream in the particular process. So now when I run this what-if simulation, I see that I should reduce the cycle time and the performance of this process by a whopping 3 days, from 4 days down to about 1. Now, that's performance. So with the confidence in our model and the what-if experiment we've done, we go ahead and we go ahead and implement this process, but we're also careful to continually monitor the process performance indicators with our performance cockpit. So in the performance cockpit, I can see after the change was implemented, the order cycle time dropped dramatically. And one nice side effect of this reduction in cycle time was our complaint ratio from customers also dropped. So a nice side benefit to the improvement of this process. So the proposed change provided our goals for an efficient, effective process that delivers high performance. And now, Mark, I'll pass it back to you to continue the conversation.
Mark, that is very kind of you. I think this was very important for us to see what Mark has been just sharing with us, the ability to differentiate the processes and understand the challenges within it. I would like to confirm, I know a lot of executives which we have here on the calls would say it seems very unrealistic that I literally can improve the performance close to 300%. The scenario that Mark showed, saying this just seems unrealistic. Let me confirm that we have been organizations where you rethink it in the way how you do information handling, reporting, how you do the flows. You need to remember that your systems have done the information flows based on your process flows. And your process flows are the way it does it in an ineffective way. So when you rethink it, we had an organization, by the way, this is a government organization. We work with a lot of governments that had close to 900% improvements. Private sector, we do see a little bit less, but they are typically around the areas of at least double. So it is not surprising what Mark showed us. In this case, you have certain decisions to do. We are coming to the end. There's certain aspects you need to think about. There's long-term decisions. So you need to provide direction to the level of standardization for your cost potential, your level of integration for your flexibility potential, your operational maturity development in order to say where are we developing what, and no, don't go towards the idea to all develop one from one maturity to another. You need different maturities at this level. High level of standardization would be okay at a maturity 2 or 3. Where you are unique, you need obviously a higher level of maturity. So even there, most organizations apply maturity model principles a wrong way. Furthermore, what's my skills development or sourcing idea? I can rethink my sourcing. By the way, your whole outsourcing idea or insourcing idea should be based on such an operating model. Furthermore, you need to think of a business architecture template. What's your business direction, centralized versus regional? What's my program? What's my cost? Where can I reduce costs? Where can I increase my quality? Where can I become better with value or speeds? So in this case, furthermore, you need to think of this in an application and technology landscape. I'm going to spend very few slides on these perspectives because your entire total cost of ownership, your TCO, as well as your return of investment can be changed. You can reduce your TCO and you can increase your return of investment. So let's take a look at how this is. This is an example of operating model decisions. If they even go through such an exercise, they think of it from a business model perspective. They say, oh, we are now diversified, but we need to be more. So in the 2B short term, we need to be a little bit more integrated and replicated, and then we want to have a high level of integration and standardization. And they actually think all of this is the same thing for the rest of the business. However, from a business process perspective, there is aspects I want to have highly integrated and standardized, and there is aspects I actually want to have high level of standardization. However, from a business service perspective, as it is taught, there is at least 5 to 15% that needs to be very diversified. So it needs to be in this area where it has more higher level of integration if you are not happy where it is. Then there is about 80% of your business that needs to have a high level of standardization, parts of it high level of integration. So from a business service perspective, you will have a very diversified way of looking at your operating model than from a process perspective. The challenge, however, is most organizations we see, they handle their information systems exactly the same way they handle their process systems. By the way, they implement their systems based on the process, which by the way is still right, but they don't rethink it from an operating model perspective. Hence they inherit the problem that they actually do the automated way exactly the same way they do the manual way, which is very, very sad. So the information flow actually follows the process flow, which it shouldn't. It should more follow the service flow, the services within the organizations. In this perspective, I'm just trying to give a perspective of how it needs to be rethought. This is where architecture thinking plays a role and business thinking plays a role. So you can use this both from business and technical architecture. So you can look at this from a customer data, product data, shared services. You can look at it from your infrastructure technology, your middlewares, your portals, your decision-making aspects, your system components. You can literally define what will I have where. Furthermore, you can actually look at it even from a higher level. You can address the IT operating model. How do we want to handle IT strategy, planning, and management? What about our application development and maintenance? What about our infrastructure? All of these aspects you need to handle in a different way. What I'm trying to tell you is that there is huge potentials of organizations rethinking their business model of IT, rethinking the way the business operates or how IT actually supports it. Such a deliverable, I know this is small for those of you who want this example, for the companies who want it, not the consulting companies. We've had a lot of consulting companies who want it, but for the companies who want it, you can have it. There is no free cost and there is no cost. It is literally if you wanted the examples, we are happy to send it. This is how such a deliverable looks like, where you will have a business architecture. In this case, it is a business architecture for a financial operating model. In the case you want one for HR or you want one for another area, please feel free to write me or Gretchen an email, and I'm happy to see what we haven't sent to you. So you would have here a link from your strategic business objectives to your critical success factors to your KPIs with your business areas and your business competencies to the owners. Exactly what we saw in iGraphics doing. With all the business process types, is it a main process? Is it a supporting process, or is it a management process? Because in the management process I need my decision making. Then I have my business processes, my process steps, my process activities, and within it I even have my solutions. And I then have my workflows which are involved. That's the output of such an operating model, that you can literally then implement it both in your business, in your measurements, in your reports, in your KPI trees, in your processes, and even in your workflows. In the case you are wondering how to use this in your architectural layers, the notations, Mark has already shown you the picture I showed you beforehand. This one. This is done in an Excel sheet. He has done how it shows in a notation. These notations that Mark showed, you can use and model. You can actually use it in your layered architecture approach. So in your business layer, you apply to your business processes, your business services, your business definitions, your business competencies, and your task definitions. This should give you an input. So there are certain aspects, automated services, automated tasks, automated data objects, information objects. This can be used for application services, your data definitions, and therefore even your data services and your data components. That's your data storage, your data output, your data input, your collections of data objects, and your data objects itself. So you can apply rules, rule tasks, rule sets, rule scripts, reporting tasks for it. What we are trying to show you is a whole new way of how to handle notations. This is an extended way, and this is, by the way, why we call this extended BPMN. This is an extended way how to use it. It interlinks with your enterprise architecture. It interlinks with your operating model. Here we are showing you which notations you can use from your iGraphics through the different layers of your models. All right. So, in addition to that, all these objects here that would be defined, your business objects, your information objects, your data objects, your automated tasks, your automated services, those you can use and reuse directly. You can actually sort them. Mark has shown in an earlier session how this is done. You can literally use this information. You can have it portrayed. This is a view. What are my business objects? You can actually rethink your operating model based on it. What are my information objects? What are my data objects? You could actually see where do you have gaps, where do you then need to integrate it. So in the case you think this is going to be too difficult to rethink everything from the top to the bottom, well, if you actually are using the tool the right way, and please note we do realize no tool is better than the fool who uses it. There is kind of a connection between it. In this case, however, you can have quite advanced ways of modeling behind it. You can use all of this information furthermore to populate it. For those of you who don't know what this is SAP Solution Manager. So this is a change request within Solution Manager for your business blueprint within the system. You can right now here link your business process, steps, activities. You can rethink your interfaces, your data types, your process scenarios, including with how your organizations has been set up, with your logical system informations. Here's the objects I just showed before. So you can add them, portray them. You can rethink transactions. So you can both already use it when you have an existing, or if you're saying, wow, I want to, however, rethink of implementing an ERP systems like Oracle, Navision, SAP, etc., etc. Lots of good ones out there. We just wanted to show you that this is not only a thing that you do in your process team. This is something you can use across your layers. Anyway, we are coming to the very conclusions. The lessons learned today should be how to define your operating model. Low-hanging fruits, I think the quick wins I've already said. Define your operating model, link to strategy, identify your areas where you differentiate your operating model principles. You can have the presentation, take a look at it. We highly recommend you. Your benefits to save the multiple 100% lays in the duplications of resources, repetitions of business functions, reappearance of business services, the reoccurrence of the business processes, and redundancy of informations and data, not to speak about the license cost that you have to do an ineffective way of operating within your systems. Anyway, we are finished today. If you have anyone of you wants some of this material, the operating model ontology, the example of the oil and gas operating model, the lead pain point modeling, we have a quite detailed how to handle it. So if anybody of you wants to try, feel free. If you are an organization, a company, you just send an email to Gretchen or myself. We are happy to send it out. With that, I'm giving over to Gretchen, who will finish up.
All right, great. Thank you very much, Mark. I really appreciate all the great content you presented today. So as we mentioned at the start, we are offering the opportunity to discuss the specific goals that you might have for innovation and transformation through a series of free workshops. So we actually meet with your team, iGraphics and Mark von Rosing, and through discussion we cover the challenges and desired results that you're looking for and propose recommended actions and the benefits to your business. So those workshops, again, are free, and to kick that off you can contact either Leading Practice or iGraphics at the emails that are here. We'll also send those out in an email follow-up to everyone that's joined us today. So obviously, I think it would be a great idea if you also make sure not to miss the next webinar in our series. Over the next few months, we're going to continue drilling into the various business domains that support innovation and transformation, and we'll continue with the domains that most companies see as the easiest place to start, and these are the ones that lend themselves to transformation. Then we'll work our way through the models that help drive innovation and differentiation. So in relationship to transformation, we've already covered cost reduction, learned about operations today. Our next webinar will be focusing on the performance model of the organization. So if you have any additional questions for Mark von Rosing, his contact email is here. We'll also send that out. BPM courses based on his leading practice principles are available. You can check those out at the link shown on the screen. And for more information on iGraphics, please come and visit our website, and feel free to contact us directly if you'd like a tailored demonstration of any of the business process management solutions that we showed today. We can also offer on-site consulting to help you assess your current state of your process program and how we can help you be more successful in your quest for process excellence. So thanks again for everyone for joining us today. We're going to continue with questions, so if you're able, please stay on the line to hear our Q&A session.